Did you know that the way you earn money in UX design actually define your work experience, what your portfolio will look like, and what qualities do you need to showcase on job interviews? I'm talking about the difference between agencies, freelance, and in-house work in tech. My name is Ines. I have 15 years of experience in UX design and I did them all. I started working in agencies and I did so for 9 years. Then I did freelance here and there. And then in 2019, I transitioned working in-house in big tech companies. So in this video, I will explain to you the differences between business models and hopefully will give you an idea which business model is the best fit for you. Let's go. Just one more time. What business models exist? It's working as a freelancer, working in an agency, or working in-house, meaning working in a big tech company or in a startup as a designer employed right to the product. Actually, why do I call them business models? It's because I believe that this is the organizational structure that predefines your work. You will be earning money for different things, and that's why the requirements and constraints you will have at work will be different. Any business problem, the exact same one, can be effectively solved by designers in every business model. But you just have to be mindful about pros and cons and the consequences of each. So let's talk about the first business model, and it is probably the oldest one. It is called freelance. I'm sure most of you know what the freelance is, but in a very general sense, in case there are people who don't know what it is, it's when you're working with different clients or maybe with one client at a time, but you are there alone. You have a contract with them, but you have no managers, no colleagues, and you do all negotiations and contractual relationships with the client alone. There are roughly two types of freelance employment that I know of. The first one is the classical one, being paid by an hour. And this is the majority of freelance work. You might be billing your clients on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, or maybe you can even have a contract with them for a year of work, but eventually your payment will be calculated by the hours of work that you put to the project. The second type of freelance employment is when you are being paid by packages. And this is a bit of a more complex way of working. It's, to be honest, not very popular in tech, in UX design, but it's very popular in graphic design because if you just need a branding or with business cards, with a logotype, so there is a certain package that you can name, then you can come to a freelancer and just buy this package from them. And then regardless of the time a freelancer will put into it, you will pay for this package. Actually, I think if you are being serious about UX design and you want to stay in this career for many years, it's really hard not to take 1-2 freelance projects during your lifetime. I did a lot of freelancing in the beginning of my career. This is actually, you can roughly say, how I started. And I also did some freelance project as a complementary projects to my day job. It was a bit hard, but it was worth it in my opinion back then. Then I also had a recent freelance project for 3 months when I was in between my careers. So I have some experience with that, and I will just tell you pros and cons from my perspective. There are a lot of pros, of course, of being a freelancer. And many people have in mind the flexibility that this employment type gives you. And I agree with it. You can be pretty flexible. You don't really need to be living in a certain place, in a certain town where your office is located. So you can travel, you can go to Asia, you can do whatever you want to do with your spare time. And this is completely true. I will talk about the darker side of this when we will touch on cons, because there is always two sides of the coin, I feel like. Then another good thing about this employment type is that you actually don't have any bosses or managers that you are being reported to. Yes, you have your clients to manage and eventually they have to like your work, but it's a different type of relationship. Eventually you are not reporting to anyone, you are your own boss. The third advantage that I could name, and this is what I really felt in the beginning of my career when I was doing a lot of freelance, is that eventually you can create your own pool of clients. And within this pool, you can be really comfortable. In the beginning of working as a freelancer, it's really challenging to find clients, and you are working with random people. Maybe not everyone of them will like your work. You might also not like them all that much, but eventually you will bump into people that really enjoy working with you, and they will just keep coming back to you for your work. And within this pool, it is a very comfortable zone. Unfortunately for me, back then, I knew that my UX design and UI design was not yet to the point, but it was sufficient for my clients. And I actually quit this employment type and found a job in an agency because I felt that I can really stagnate there. Because my clients, they were not demanding enough. They were just happy with what I had to offer at that time. But also, like life doesn't have to be a challenge all the time. So knowing that this point exists in freelance is actually quite motivational, and it is always an option. But I would say that considering this, I would recommend starting freelance maybe once you've tried employment of a different sort. But it's up to you. The other good thing about freelance is that you can niche down or specialize. What I mean by that? By niching down, I mean that you only want to work with medical companies. That's you can do. This is absolutely allowed, and actually by doing this, it will be easier for you to win clients. The specialization is a bit of a different thing. It's when you want to work only with quantitative research, and this is what you specialize on. You can take clients from different industries, but you only will do this narrow, focused work. And this is what you are good in. So if you have a specific interest or a specific industry niche that you want to work with, freelance might be a good option, and it will definitely allow you to do so. And then the other good thing about freelance, I don't know if you will find it controversial or not, but for me it was really an advantage, is that you can try different projects at the same time working full time. This is what I did in the beginning of my career. I also had been employed by a company that did not value design work, and I felt that to gain there a valid portfolio will take me a while. So I started taking on some freelance projects that I found interesting for me, and this is how I was managed to build up my portfolio in the beginning without losing on a stable and well-paid job. So yeah, it's also a possible option, because it's always available. Then let's talk about cons, shall we? And the first thing I want to mention is the shadow side of the flexibility. Is the unpredictability of freelance. And this unpredictability touches everything. It's really hard to quantify your workload for a given month, for example, because sometimes there are peaks and all of your clients, they will demand attention, and then you will have to be buried under those work that you have. But some other months during the summer, for example, or in December, you almost have no projects. And this was for me quite challenging. The other type of unpredictability is this place between freelance gigs. Even if you prefer working with one client at the same time to avoid these peaks of workload, which I understand, then once you finish with one client, there is this period when you don't have yet other clients, and this period can be long or short, and you never know that. Eventually, even if you will be looking for a new client and you will find one, they will usually require you to start immediately. That was for me a challenge. Yes, in theory, you can travel, you can see the world while being a freelancer, that is true, but at the same time, you will have to work while traveling. And that's, for me, is not an ideal setup, but that's definitely my preference. Because this unpredictability really prevents me from planning my travels, and then eventually I find an interesting client and they want me to start immediately. I don't want to lose this client because I don't know when the next one is coming, and then I jump into this, and then all my travels, they will be behind my laptop screen. So I don't know. Eventually it's you to decide. And of course, there is also unpredictability with the income that you receive. For me, that was the major challenge. I really like to have everything planned. I have budgets for the months, for the year, and things like that. But it's definitely a certain mindset that you can adopt to make it easier for you. Then another disadvantage of a freelance for me personally was that I had to deal with client management. And that was quite tough. So I had to remind them to pay the bills on time. I had to bill them. I had to solve some problems, what if a client disappears. So, and all that on top of doing an actual design work. And that all adds to the workload that I experienced as a freelancer. And this work type, it's not necessarily something I want to be good at. But I had to do a lot of this work. And honestly, in the beginning of my career, that distracted me also from honing my skills in UX and UI design. So again, I still believe that you can benefit from freelance more once you are a seasoned professional. But you can of course mind this challenge from the very beginning, and especially if you like that, then it's also not a problem. But I'm telling about my experience in freelance, so bear with me. The third disadvantage that I found working as a freelancer is that it could be quite a lonely experience. So yes, you don't have a boss, but you also don't have colleagues. You almost have no one to talk with during your work. And you also don't have any examples to live up to, any people that you aspire to become, no mentors that are related to the work that you do. Yes, you can find UX design community elsewhere, mentors. I, by the way, have the UX Club. The link will be down below. We have there regular live meetings and a lot of materials, discussions, and things like that. So it's very fun there. But eventually you will have to plan it for yourself. If you are the type of person that loves people around you, at least occasionally, then it is something to take into account. Now, with that being said, let's discuss how working as a freelancer affects your work and your portfolio. And I think the major thing that most people underestimate completely is the fact that you are being paid by hours of work in freelance. In a general freelance situation, the shorter your path to solving a problem will be, the better designer you will be for these clients. What I mean by that is that in UX design, we often have periods in our work when we are thinking, sketching, doing wireframes, and basically exploring the area of a problem. So this is something that is really hard to sell to your clients, because clients have to see the progress constantly, and this progress has to be meaningful for them. So this period where you explore the unknowns and you do sketches and wireframes, it most of the time does not even exist in your freelance work. Partially because most of the clients, they will come to you with a digested problem statement. So there will be very little room, if any, to explore the problem on your own. And most of them will be waiting that you take this problem statement and you turn it almost by magic to a finalized high-level design solution without any stages in between, because every stage in between that you will be showcasing, it's something that they are paying you for, and that could make them nervous about if you are spending the time in a really effective way. So eventually, when you are building your portfolio after freelance, you might encounter a certain challenge. This challenge being that you don't have any wireframes or sketches or even any exploration for your solution. But actually, if you are planning to continue working as a freelancer, you really don't need this stage in your portfolio. You don't need to show it. You don't need to explain it. Your work in portfolio should look like it was done by magic, completely from problem to a very elegant solution. But at some point in your career, you might decide that you want to transition to working in-house in tech, being a product designer employed inside inside of a product. And this might become a problem because if you know case studies of people who are working in tech, you know that there is a big area where they talk about the problem statement and the sketches on the napkin and all sorts of different fidelity wireframes and things like that. So you might be missing this, and for freelance it's complete normal, but you will have to figure out what to do with that in order to transition to freelance. I might say it right away that working backwards and adding wireframes and sketches on a napkin to your freelance project might not look good, because we can definitely see it as hiring managers that this part is being faked. So I don't really recommend that. So please don't do that. Find another way, create new case studies, new portfolio specifically for tech companies. But working backwards, it's not something I recommend. So let's wrap up how working as a freelancer will affect your portfolio. I want to emphasize it one more time. Because of the clients coming to freelancers with a digested problem statement to which they explain to get an immediate high-level solution, you will have very little influence on UX design part. And this is also sort of normal for freelancers. This is sort of expected. Yes, you can specialize on certain small parts of UX design process, like quantitative research, for example, but you will not be able to influence the whole user experience because that will be maintained inside of a client organization. This is something definitely to keep in mind because this will affect your portfolio, making the transition to in-house quite challenging. Okay, I hope that is clear. I don't know if you are looking forward to work as a freelancer or feel that the freelance is definitely not for you. Let me know in the comments what do you think about that after my talk. Then let's talk about agencies work. And this piece might be shorter because a lot of things will be inherited from freelance. And this is also very logical because a lot of agencies, they are started by people who have been working as freelancers for many years. They have created a pool of clients, and this pool has become so big at one point that they had to hire additional help to manage the workload. This is how the typical agency is started. Now, I've been working in agencies for 9 years, as I said, and I actually loved that. So for many years, I did not see any problems working like that. So maybe this will also affect pros and cons that I will name. But what is important to understand that in agencies, you are also paid by hours. Even if you receive a monthly fixed salary, the initial contract between an agency and a client will be, same as with the freelance, either based on hours or by packages. So there is no surprises in that, no changes. Maybe with packages it is getting more often, but again, packages in UX design is not something popular yet. In web design, maybe yes, if you just need a landing page, but if we're talking about classical UX design and iterations and design process, then unfortunately we cannot promise any package. So let's talk about pros working in an agency. And as I said, I saw a lot of advantages working in this employment type. First advantage for me was that it is more stable than a freelance. Yes, you will still be working with clients, but it's not you who have to find clients. There are certain people that care that the workload is evenly distributed. So you can be sure that after you finish working with this client, there are going to be something else that will come to your table. The other good thing is that you are not managing clients that much. You are not billing them, you are not reminding them anything. You can just focus on your UX and UI design craft. This is also for me was quite good because honestly this part I did not enjoy at all. And overall, as an agency, you might get access to bigger projects because in an agency there are multiple people employed, there are motion designers, 3D designers, and clients that might come to you might require something more adventurous, something more interesting, something where you can challenge yourself. So it's not that fast once you can reach out this pool of clients where you will feel comfortable. There is always a challenge working in an agency, and it benefits your skills development. And because there are also multiple projects, they are very interesting and challenging, you are growing faster. And you are also not alone anymore. In most agencies, there are other designers to work with, to ask for advice, to exchange ideas. And this, in my opinion, accelerates the growth. So this is also very good. Now let's talk about the disadvantages of working in an agency as a UX UI designer. And for me, eventually they outweighed the benefits. So most of the cons working in an agency are similar to working as a freelancer. And the major problem for me is that you are still not so involved in the creation of UX design. You are mostly working on UI design still, because the problem appears inside of a client's organization. And there will always be an initial group of people, and agency will not be included in this group, that will decide on like some preliminary ideas and will crunch the data and things like that. So everything that I find really the most interesting part of UX design was taken down from the agency work. And what happened with me personally is that at some point I achieved a certain level of the execution excellence where I did not really know how to improve my visual design skills more. I was facing a choice to learn motion design, 3D design, and I started doing that to enrich even more my skill set. But eventually I felt that it is a bit more repetitive. If you are just only working on a visual part, yes, it's also fun, it's very rewarding, you can gain certain awards and things like that, but then eventually someone else is deciding on what you need to be working on. And that for me at some point has become a constraint. That's why in 2019 I switched to working in-house as a product designer. Now, you will be facing the same constraint in your portfolio, and I faced that as well, of not having this UX part and actually only having the final results. But again, if you are planning to continue working with agencies or want to be employed there for the first time and you don't want to switch working in-house, this is exactly how your portfolio should look like. You don't really need to show all the backstage of the work, every detail of an internal kitchen, because your clients will not be paying you for that, or they will think they will not be paying you for that, and this is what you want them to believe in. But because I wanted to switch, I had this challenge and I had to be really creative. As I said, I don't really recommend working backwards, and I don't recommend it deeply based on my own experience, because that was exactly what I did in the beginning of my switch. I took my best agency projects and I worked backwards from the final result towards the problem definition, wireframes and whatnot, and I was really struggling to find a job, to be honest, and I could only make a progress and complete my switch once I did some standalone case studies for product companies specifically, where I had all the internal processes as they would be run in a real world situation inside of an in-house company. And now, as I am a principal product designer at Zalando and I interview people for the jobs, I can clearly see when this situation happens, when people work backwards, and that unfortunately is not a good sign. It's most of the time a red flag in one's portfolio. So I do not recommend it, but let's talk about working in-house. But before we start, if you like this video and you want to receive more videos like that, give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below. That's important for me and for YouTube algorithms. And we are moving on. In-house work. Right now, it's the most popular employment type in UX UI design. Believe it or not, but when I started 15 years ago, it was not clear which employment type for UX designers is the best one. Companies figure out quite fast that they need to hire software engineers in-house, but with designers it was not clear if this is a one-time work, if this is work that is needed to be done across all of the stages. So it was a consideration like that. And in the beginning, it seemed so that agencies were even winning this battle, and more UX UI designers started back then working in an agency, and this was completely normal. Now we know that UX UI designers need to be employed inside of the team to be able to influence UX design and the holistic process, and that makes this employment type the most popular one. Now, an important part about this employment type is that you are being paid a fixed salary. Yes, you might argue that you have 40 hours per week written in your contracts. That's also true, but nobody is tracking how you are spending those hours. And that's why you have more room for doing what is important for this particular project. If you think that in this project you need to stay on the ideation phase longer, that is allowed. The only person that you will probably need to notify is your manager, but it is absolutely allowed. In an agency, it's really hard, because then you have to talk about that with clients, and you will have to explain why there is a delay, and this is a very hard conversation to have. And honestly, I don't really recommend doing this often, because clients, they don't like it, and they like the predictability of an hours that you estimate. But here, working in-house, we are very much flexible with how we use our hours. So that result, in my opinion, in a more influence on the UX design part, and on the part that I personally really enjoy, where you are just facing a problem and you don't yet know what solution can be attached to this problem. And this is already the first advantage for me for working in a tech company or a startup employed in-house. The second advantage is that is very much stable. Yes, we have layoffs, and the tech industry overall is not considered a stable workplace anymore as it used to be before the pandemic. But honestly, working in an agency has more problems, because agency business is even more volatile. When there is a crisis, companies save money on everything, and working with agencies is the first priority. Most companies, they will default to employing freelancers instead of employing an agency. And that's why, like, during my 9 years working in an agency, I've seen different stories, different things. An agency losing an important client and letting people go. An agency that did not pay their employees, including me, for 3 months, I guess, or like even more. We had a lawsuit against them, and we did not eventually get a lot from it because a company filed a bankruptcy. So all those things. And honestly, for me, even like seeing the layoff waves, it still feels like I'm working in a more stable industry overall. So everything is, could be learned only in a comparison. But there are, of course, some cons to it. And for me, the major disadvantage of working in-house is a lot of bureaucracy, because you have suddenly all those levels of managers that you have to report to. Even if you don't have such a vertical organization and you are maybe employed in a startup, there are still colleagues together with you, with whom you will need to discuss your step, because UX design is a team exercise. When you are doing a UI part, user interface part, you can be left alone for some time. You are just there working on your own, and this is a very comfortable place. Your manager will probably not open your Figma and will not control it, so you might only need to show it a couple of times. But every discussion about user experience is an enormously long discussion that spans across many weeks, months, because we really want to do this right for our users. That's why we need an input from many people to be able to be sure that we did not forget anything. This is for me a big challenge, to be honest, and depending on the size of an organization, this could be a bigger or lesser problem. But I've never faced so many discussions when I were working in agencies, even though I've worked in agencies where we had like more than 100 people, which is considered a big one. But anyways, this is the reality of working in-house, but it could also be an enjoyable part because in some cases really you learn a lot from your colleagues, and your UX design and UI design is really becoming better during the course of those conversations. This is eventually what I notice for myself. And then the other disadvantage that I see of working in-house is a slower growth of your skills. Probably for me now, it's not so much of a problem because I'm really focused on the UX design part, and my UI design skills and research skills, they are up to the point. But I often see how junior and middle career designers struggle in the beginning because they are not given a variety of tasks to try out, as in a comparison of an agency work where every 2-3 months you have a new challenge to work on, new design system, new branding, new visual identity, new situation, new size of a project. Here we are more stable working in-house, and your workload could be more predictable, but also the variety might not be achieved that often, because also all projects that we do, they take longer on average, longer that this project would take for an agency to produce. In that all results in a slower growth, in a slower career progression, in a slower salary progression, or for people whose first work is an in-house work. So depending on what your priorities are, you can decide what is more important for you. And I think actually a good thing is that we have so many employment types for UX designers to choose from. I think many job functions, they don't have this luxury. But let's also talk how working in-house will affect your portfolio. And you might think, yeah, that's my portfolio will be super good just by the fact that I've been employed in an in-house company. I will have this part where I influenced UX design, where I did wireframes, prototypes, and things like that. Yes, this is true, but if you will decide to switch to agencies, you will also face a problem, because usually, compared to the size of a project in the execution that an agency person will do and an in-house person, for in-house, we will have smaller projects overall as a result. So you might be working on something that took you a year to get through, but eventually it will be, I don't know, a drop down and a page or a pop-up that opens in this particular place of the interface. But yes, it took you so long to define which place of the interface this shall be placed. And that is just too incremental for agencies. In agencies, oftentimes you are given a work to work from the very beginning, to establish a design system, colors, typography, and everything all together. So again, if you are planning to stay in-house working in different startups or big tech companies, that will not be a problem. Just continue showing your process, continue showing your backstage, how did you organize workshops, how were your files organized and things like that. And then the result that you have eventually, it's the result that you have. But if you will decide to switch to agencies, then think about a creative way to add more projects to your portfolio, because it's actually quite hard to inflate projects from product design when you just switch to agencies. I don't think it's even possible. So you cannot work backwards. Well, you can hide those pieces, but you eventually cannot say that you have designed all the project when in the reality you did only the small part of it, right? And the last and a very important part to say about working in-house and portfolios is that many people are so stressed about showing the results in the UX designer's portfolio. They are so stressed, they are almost paralyzed of publishing anything. And it's normal, yes, of course, it's really nice if you can show some numbers, and it's normal to be searching for them, but there is really no point into being stressed about that if you are applying to in-house companies and tech companies. Because even if you've been working in one company and because of your designs, a company has started gaining 1.2% more of yearly revenue, that sounds nice and fantastic, but because UX design is a team exercise, it's really hard to take this number solely on yourself. And also, you cannot promise to a next employee to raise these numbers in the same manner as you did in your previous job, because the whole company structure might be different, the goals might be different, the team you've been working on might be less or more experienced. So your previous success in numbers in the previous company is not a predictor of a future success, and we know that working in-house. And that's why I'm saying there is no stress about that. There is no need to really find numbers and far-fetch those numbers to your designs. Just give yourself some slack. What is a predictor of your success in a new company is how you behaved during the design process when you encountered challenges. Because by seeing this story, I can project how you will be reacting when we will have the same challenge. For example, if you had a colleague with whom you had a conflict, that for me is important, how you manage this conflict, or how you managed a stakeholder, or how you worked with the constraint of not having research done on a project. And this is exactly for me the most interesting part. This is exactly the predictability of your success in the company, and not a number that you have achieved not by working alone. You're not a business consultant. You had a lot of people around you helping you to achieve this result. And also, being honest, probably the problem that was brought to you by your PM was the major accelerator of this success and this number, and not your designs. Any design could solve this and could raise this. It's often the case. So don't be stressed about not having numbers. Don't be stressed about even not having projects published and realized in a real product, because it's not the result we're interested in for in-house companies, but the process, the backstage, and how you overcome the obstacles. So I hope it is now crystal clear for you how working in different business models in UX UI design will affect your working experience, will result in projects that you have in your portfolio, and possible challenges that you might encounter when you decide to switch between business models. But again, this is an advantage that we have the choice in UX UI design, and you can change that. You can try one and then being smart about the transition and try another one, then see what fits you best. And I personally really enjoy this choice, because this is what allowed me to work in this field for 15 years. And there is, in my opinion, no good or bad business models or employment types, because any problem, even the same one, can be effectively solved through all of the business models. And I'm actually very interested. Let me in the comments which business model you are working on right now, or you are planning to work with if you are looking for your first job in UX UI design. I'm really curious. Let's continue the discussion there. And if you like this video and you want to receive more videos like that, hit the subscribe button down below, and I see you next time.